dramatic camera angles, and a week and a half long delay, it's a common briefing program. This is the shell of a podcast where we once talked about so many things, but now we're covering geek news as a way to stay sort of up to date on the hottest headlines of nerdy things around the world. My name is Colin. I tend to host these geeky affairs, and I am joined by my two very good friends.
I am Jeff. And look at this. Me and Chowder are both wearing blue shirts with circles on them. So why don't you fucking get on our level, Colin?
Yeah, this is a very gray shirt. The lights
Ain't
make
that
it seem
some
blue.
coincidence? Anyways,
Yeah.
Hello. I am. What? I dropped.
Did not work like you wanted it to.
I am Timel or
A blob.
Chowder. What
is
which is it?
What are we doing?
It's a mystery box.
You'll
You'll never know.
And you can't tell because we can't see you at all.
I love that what happened
No,
was
Flirt.
you did the right thing with the camera, and Discord is like, I guess everything is the background now, except just your
Discord
fucking
was
eye
like,
for
"Oof."
like 1 second at a time. There's like
Discord's like, I don't know if that could possibly be a face.
It was
I don't
like
know.
a brown and blue mass, and then like a very sharp eye like poked through horrifyingly. That was nightmarish.
That's a mystery box.
Yeah, my camera angle is so strange because Rebecca, my partner with whom I live, allegedly has been spending a lot of time out of the house to help her parents because her dad went through some medical stuff. And I got so...
Sorry, wait, hold on. Slow the fuck down.
Yeah.
Allegedly has been spending a lot of time out of the house, or allegedly lives with you?
Allegedly lives with me because she has been spending a lot of time out of the house. So basically, I went through the process of like...
You should know.
Yeah, I mean, I should. It's very confusing. But I have had the opportunity to sit here and go, well, what the fuck...
She's in the walls.
Yeah.
She's in the fucking walls.
I hit a point where I was like, I actually started running out of like my regular stuff to do. And then I just deep cleaned the whole fucking house. And that included recable managing and reorganizing my desk. And until right just now, I didn't realize I did not put any thought into where my camera is currently placed. So this is and like the cable is all tied up right now. And I hopped on and I'm like, I'm not going to make these guys wait for me to fix my camera. And that gave us the horrifying Chowder beholder that we had just a moment ago.
I do like the idea that you came on and you're like, oh, I'm not going to make these guys wait while I'm just fucking sitting here eating chicken.
Yeah, you were eating a bucket of chicken. Like, are you fucking ready to go, guys? Like, come on.
I took the gamble. I cooked up some chicken strips and some curly fries. I took the gamble that one of you would either be late or have technical issues, and that did pay off for a little while.
A little bit it did. No, I got my shit together pretty fast. But we have had quite a month. It's been a weird like stop and start year where we've had like complete dry seasons. Yeah. June into July has been really bananas. It's like we've had such like a dense drop of like geek content, but then we've also had like some pretty like industry society shaking stuff happen, and we're gonna do our best to spotlight what we think is the most interesting, impactful, or important. I think it's pretty safe to say we are not the most qualified to like give in-depth analysis of all the dynamics at play with the dynamics at play versus strikes. But I think we can certainly have interesting conversations about what is going on and how it will impact the things that we're interested in, even if we don't get into like the broader ethical things on the table. So plenty of meat on the bone, and I think that's just kind of where I want to dive in. If you guys have no objection.
I was eating chicken strips. They were boneless.
I wanted to like riff with you on that, but I so prefer bone-in wings that like any joke I had was torpedoed by me wanting to say like you're eating the wrong kind of wings, and I'm like, well, that's not a good energy.
Well, it wasn't really wings; they were chicken strips. I don't know if you make the distinction, but there's nuggets, there's boneless wings, and there's chicken strips.
So chicken nuggets,
chicken strips all the way, or bone-in wings.
Yeah,
you know, I don't really like boneless wings, and chicken nuggets are terrible. But
I mean, chicken nuggets are kind of like nacho cheese in that like they're like maybe on some technical level chicken, but they are a strange modern, like just puree of garbage that I think is delicious.
I ordered chicken strips at a restaurant like a week or two ago, and they were a lie. It was like chicken nuggets that were really convincingly shaped like chicken strips, and it was like I bit into it and I was like, oh,
there was like,
oh no,
like you were not biting into muscle, like there was no, they were not actually
exactly.
like chicken breast.
It was just complete McDonald's chicken nuggets flavor.
Cool. So putting aside my chicken disappointment and Jeff's chicken disappointment, let's get into a month of excitement. So I want to cover two pretty broad things. Not chicken related, as far as I know, like at all. The things I want to cover, I just kind of want to speed through what I think are the highlights from the various announcements that we got in summer. So June has historically, for the last couple decades, been the month where E3, the Electronics Entertainment Expo, really drives the conversation in terms of geek news. Did you just kill a fly with one hand?
No. I missed.
Oh, okay.
And I've been having a battle with this fruit fly for the past like day or two.
Oh, that's nothing. A wasp got into my house the other day when I was on a work call, and the person I was talking to could not discern that I was in like an existential panic. But I ran downstairs in the middle of the call.
Wasp phobia.
And then the wasp went into Rebecca's room. She was helping her parents out. So I shut the door to her room, put a towel at the bottom so it couldn't escape, and I texted Rebecca, whenever you come back, there's going to be a wasp in your room. And she got back yesterday and had to go kill a wasp immediately.
I've had
home for her birthday.
I've had like times where like a house centipede like runs across the floor and into some crevice, and I'm just like,
this is not safe.
Worried.
Yeah.
Like
I fear for my life.
What if it comes back?
The hierarchy of
what
needs.
If it comes back in my sleep?
Shelter is pretty foundational. Something like a wasp or a house centipede invalidates the concept of shelter to me. You're no longer sheltered. Yeah. You're in the wild.
Also, it's weird that we call them. It's weird that we call them house centipedes when they're actually millipedes. Going by like count.
I think it's weird that we haven't burned the earth to the ground to exterminate them, but we're getting there.
I've had a couple of spiders chilling in my bathroom for a little while, and it was like it's the kind of thing where it's just like I don't really notice them unless I sit down on the toilet because they're always in the exact same spot, and then I like Yeah, see, I thought that for a while because there was one spider that was like literally in the same place like before I went to like Albuquerque for a week and a half, and then I came back and I noticed it was still there. I was like, oh, that spider must be dead. And then a couple days ago it started moving. I was like, what the fuck, bro?
Really
like I think that
spider.
I live a pretty, like just chill out, live in the same place kind of lifestyle, but I've got nothing on those spiders. Now I kind of like them, they stay in their little zone, and I just kind of look at them when I poop.
Listen, I'd be fine with wasps if they stayed in their little zone, but on the topic of spiders, the season of game reveals got kicked off by a little game called Spider-Man 2. Now, this took place in May, but Sony had their showcase first. The interesting thing being that since E3 has failed to keep up its own momentum, did not happen this year. It's not happening next year. It's not happening the year after that. So in its place...
E3 really hasn't been relevant in years.
Yeah, a lot. They've failed
even before the pandemic. Before the pandemic.
Correct, yeah. It's been dying a slow death as they failed to attract presenters, including folks like Microsoft and Sony pulling out because it's in their best interest to just present their own thing than rely on the platform of someone else. However, in its place was Summer Games Fest this year, where Jeff Keighley, creator of the Game Awards, noted video game journalist, communicator, personality, put together sort of his own thing, and that set off its own wave of reveals, with the exception of Sony, who did their thing in May. The highlights being we saw Spider-Man 2 gameplay footage with a non-Eddie Brock Venom as the primary protagonist, as well as the symbiote suit being a part of the game. And people were like, I wonder what's going on. I think theories are that it's Kraven the Hunter. More on that in a bit. And then Bungie also surprised...
Sony.
Bungie also
Sony,
surprise
revealed... I'm trying to make Kraven the Hunter a thing.
Yeah. Bungie in that same showcase...
he's a popular villain, but like without Spider-Man, it's just like...
Yeah.
He's just a dude.
I mean, welcome to all of the Sony Marvel cinematic garbage. The other big thing that came out of that
Spider-Man villain verse.
was Marathon, which is Bungie reviving their old IP from the 90s and turning it into an extraction shooter, something like Tarkov or Hunt Showdown, and turning that into a new thing. And that's Bungie's first new game since Destiny about 10 years ago. So Sony sort of hit with those two things, and everything else sort of fell to the wayside. Radio silence until Summer Games Fest. The first day was the sort of boilerplate, like, hey, we have a little bit of showing from everybody. And there were really two things that I think have remained in the conversation since then. I guess, no, I'm looking at the list now. The main takeaways are that we are getting Mortal Kombat 1, which I think I mentioned at the very tail end of our last recording because reveals were happening as we were chatting. Alan Wake 2, which is a sequel to a very beloved video game that is going full survival horror. The next installment in the Final Fantasy VII remake, and Sonic.
That's gonna be interesting to see where that goes, considering Final Fantasy VII remake went in a bonkers direction.
I haven't played the original, nor have I played the remakes. I played a little. I'll talk about this later, but I haven't played much Final Fantasy. And then we also got Sonic Superstars, which you talked about last time, and a new Prince of Persia side scroller that looks sort of like an action Metroidvania. And everyone was kind of like, okay, we got a little something. We got something going on here. But overall, I don't think that there was like, I think the highs of what E3 used to be were never really hit during this particular time, because we had all these small announcements that did not, like, Sonic Superstars is not ground-shattering. The 12th Mortal Kombat game is not ground-shattering. These are all things that are just kind of like, oh, it's cool to see what's going on, and it served its function in that way. Very shortly after...
Well, with the 12th Mortal Kombat game, it's because, like, we knew it was coming. We're just waiting for
waiting for the details. I think Prince of Persia was maybe, like, the biggest surprise. Like, we were like, oh, cool, it's not dead. They're still making those. Come to Microsoft Showcase, and I think this is where the conversation really shifted. After the travesty of Redfall's release, which we talked about in some detail, people have been like, hey, Xbox, you've been doing a pretty bad job. You bought up all these studios. You really need to show that you know what you're doing, because your one of two blockbuster releases was garbage. So they said, we're going to show you an hour of games, and then we're going to show you 45 minutes of Starfield. Just this one game. Now, all the releases...
Starfield's been in development forever.
Yeah, we've known about it for ages. They announced it 6 years ago. This is from Bethesda Game Studios, the people that developed Fallout 4, Skyrim, Fallout 3, Elder Scrolls Oblivion, Morrowind. So, like, everyone has their different takes on it, but, like, an undeniably legendary studio with industry-shifting games. So you're kind of like, huh, okay. Well, we saw people turn your stuff into Fallout 76. We saw them turn your stuff into Elder Scrolls Online. And those have, like, their own big communities and issues and everything. But the question is, like, how are you going to translate this into a new thing? Are you going to retain the RPG elements that everyone likes about pre-Fallout 4 stuff? So, coming into Starfield, I think there was just sort of this vibe of, like, we're just getting game announcements, and we don't really have a lot of blockbuster stuff on the shelf for Xbox. After 45 minutes, that tenor shifted pretty quickly. I don't know how this is all a single game. And it's kind of incredible the number of systems that they've put into this. It is extremely expansive in terms of its scope, such as, you know, you have your character creation, you have your ship building, and the ship is a thing that you can physically fly on planets in outer space. The entire game of No Man's Sky is essentially just a component of this in terms that you can go mining, but then there are also fully developed cities with, like, their own pre-written quest lines and everything like that. And then there's the procedurally generated planets. And then there's the fact that, like, it has to keep track of all these bits of I think the example they use is that one person that likes to play the game behind the scenes is a sandwich thief, where they literally just will fly up against other ships in space and board their ship and kill everyone on it and take the sandwiches, and then they have a room in their ship where they hide all the sandwiches. And like that seems like a funny anecdote, but technologically that is ridiculous because the amount of storage space, the amount of CPU processing it takes to have all those individual things be tracked across the entire game, but then also put them in a ship that you designed that needs to function as a single physical volume and piece of geometry. And then have characters move about in that space that you create, and then be able to fly that. Like, I remember when Assassin's Creed 3 came out, and you could have the ship fights, and it was the first time that you could, like, sail a giant, ship from the 1700s and have a pirate-style battle. And then they made Assassin's Creed 4, where you could do that more freely, and the big technological distinction there was, well, in Assassin's Creed 3, there was no way for the game to understand that the boat wasn't real ground. And that, like, you moving relative to a boat was different from you standing on a ground. Like, they had to program in that relationship. So if you just take that basic idea and extrapolate it to all of these different functions, work on a thing that you design, and then that thing can go to multiple different locations across 1,000 procedurally generated worlds, and it's all tracked, and then you have the bones of, like, a Skyrim on top of it. It's just one of those things where you look at it, you're like, oh, this seems like the next step for games. But if you just take a second, you're like, wait, that's a lot. And the conversation became like, shifted from Zelda Tears of the Kingdom Game of the Year to, if they pull this off, and that's a big if, that is a very big if they pull this off, Zelda Tears of the Kingdom has competition. Because where Zelda Tears of the Kingdom gave you a sandbox like I've never seen before, where it's just like, here's a few basic ideas for game mechanics, some goals, and some physics. Go nuts. And it's incredible how well just those few things work together. If Starfield can deliver on its promises. I've seen
like devs like show like a video of like wheels like making a door go up by acting as like gears and being like programming witchcraft wizardry.
Because a lot of times the way that games are usually built, it's a lot of smoke and mirrors. Like there is a specific objective that you need to accomplish, and they build you the tools to accomplish that objective and try to block you from going outside of that at all. And Zelda is one of the first games where it really feels like they were just like, I fucking dare you to break this game. Like, they built the systems first and then put the content in it, and they're like, and if you break it, cool, you're smart for breaking it. And Starfield seems as though it is promising
duplication glitch.
Which they patched out entirely. They got really butthurt about that. But Starfield seems to be making the same promise on a different axis of just like, we're going to try to build, and this is the promise of all Bethesda games, we're trying to build a world that you can just like push the limits of. And the reason everyone is saying like, if they stick
whether they succeed in that is questionable.
That is the question. Here's the thing. If the 45-minute video they showed, if the experience that they are selling / letting people subscribe to is what is delivered, I will end up I can say for my own taste, I will like it more than Tears of the Kingdom. And I think a lot of people will be in that boat. These games are notoriously buggy upon launch. So we'll see what happens.
But so often, like, they'll like fake footage or like really like doctor everything. So like,
right. So
and like, I'm not saying
like
that's
it's more far along than it actually is.
Here's the thing.
Yeah, like,
this game has been in development for 10 years now, and everything they showed was in-game footage, and that still makes you think like, okay, what are they doing? I went through and I was like, let me look at the Digital Foundry breakdown. Digital Foundry, huge channel. They do a lot of work analyzing the footage in video games to try to figure out, and the performance of games to review them from a technical aspect. And their review of this was, this is game footage. You can tell because like, it's not polished in every single area. Like here, the shadows aren't rendering the way you would in a pre-rendered cutscene. Here, the frame time is not perfect, where you're hitting 30 frames per second, but they're not being delivered at the right rate. So, like, you're seeing the flaws of a video game being run in the trailer that they showed. So, as best as we can tell, everything they showed was legitimate and in-game. And they were demonstrating. Yeah, so it's like, again, this is the vibe coming out of it. Everybody's like, hold your breath. Let it be real. Please let it be real. And it was, I think the reason I wanted to say everything leading up to it is like, we got a lot of fun game announcements. But I accidentally did a thing on my screen. Let's put that back. We got a lot of game announcements and a lot of ideas of like, okay, cool. These are the things we're gonna get to buy. But with the exception of Tears of the Kingdom earlier this year and Starfield coming out now, I feel like these two games, Zelda having proven it can operate at a higher level, Starfield is promising to operate at a higher level. I don't think there was anything wrong with any of the other showcases here. Stuff like Star Wars Outlaws looks very impressive. The Avatar game looks pretty good, even though it looks just like Far Cry. We got a lot of good looks at little indies like 33 Exiles and like weird stuff I've never seen before. That's really exciting. But I think that if we're looking at this month, the big conversation to take away from it is we got to see if they stick to Starfield landing. They might not, and if they don't, Xbox is probably in really bad shape. You cannot afford another Redfall. You are making some insane promises with this game. You need to deliver. And I was very glad to see that the conversation, I mean, going on social media sites, it's a lot of, Pony versus Xbox fanboys like, haha, we got Starfield, or no, you can't you should boycott Starfield because it's not on PlayStation. And more on that in a second, but like the actual dialogue between people that are not engaging in console wars is one of like tepid excitement, and I like that vibe. I like I like everybody wanting a thing to succeed, and that's a good feeling.
Yeah, you're like, ooh,
yeah.
maybe,
yeah,
ooh, maybe.
There's like a
some
tension.
promise.
Yeah, and here's the thing: if Starfield comes out and it's like a hitchy, broken mess where like all the systems are there but nothing works, I would at the worst case for me at that point is you've got a Cyberpunk where it's like, all right, I'll come back in 2 years when they fix it, but whatever. I'll go play something else for now. You guys fucked it, so good luck. This leads me to my second main story, which is the Xbox acquisition of Activision Blizzard King. This was announced quite some time ago that Microsoft wanted to acquire Activision Blizzard King for $70 billion, and everyone was like, wait, that's illegal. And that's what the FTC said. And the FTC was apparently wrong, because as of earlier this week, the deal is going through.
Wow.
Lot of big asterisks on that. And the journey to get to those asterisks was phenomenal. For basically a week of testimony, there was a trial where basically the FTC was suing to have the court put in place an injunction that would stop the deal. The idea being that Microsoft and Activision wanted to begin the purchase by July 18th. That was like a deadline in their contract, in their purchasing agreement. And the FTC was like, we want to stop it for now. Does not mean that the FTC can't circle back around later, but the Federal Trade Commission is like, we think there are problems with this. You should please stop. And if the injunction was granted, while it wouldn't make it illegal, it would make sure that Microsoft and Activision couldn't proceed on the agreement before the deadline. And at that point, they'd both be like, we're done. Like it would effectively kill the deal because of the forces at play. The FTC, here's the thing. As a gamer, I love the idea that if this acquisition merger goes through, that a lot more Activision games will be accessible on Game Pass, because I subscribe to Game Pass. So, like, as an investor on this small level, this adds value to something I'm investing in. Cool, right? That's out of the way. That's my bias. Microsoft is a multi-trillion-dollar company, and further consolidation of an industry like this, which already has
getting very consolidated.
That's already getting very consolidated. That is becoming increasingly risk averse in large sectors, and those large sectors are treating their employees poorly, paying them poorly, giving out bad short-term contracts, failing to long-term employ. Just lots of things that are just like, this is already not a great space to be. Further consolidation makes that worse, homogenizes the corporate level, and in the future takes away power from employees and consumers. So I do not think that this acquisition is a good idea. And the FTC, it was their job upon bringing up this lawsuit to convince the court that this is the problem. Remember when I said it would come back to the PlayStation fanboys? Because I think that is exclusively what their legal team was comprised of. Because the core of the lawsuit And the arguments that the FCC was putting on display was essentially, you need to make sure that Call of Duty, one of most lucrative franchises in the world, you need to make sure Call of Duty does not become an Xbox exclusive. That was a real core part of this argument on both sides. And I mean, I'm not kidding that this happened at one point.
The forest for the trees, or the trees for the forest.
Big time. Big time. Yeah. And it got to the point where Phil Spencer, the head of Xbox, was on the stand under oath, and one of the FCC lawyers was like, will you agree right now to make sure to promise that Call of Duty will not become an Xbox exclusive and will remain on PlayStation? And he said yes. And then they were just like, okay. And I'm not kidding.
There goes our whole argument.
Exactly. Yeah. And that was the moment for me where I'm like, I feel like they're maybe not making the arguments they should. And that continued because the FCC was repeatedly putting forth statements that basically sounded like Sony talking points. And all of that fell apart when evidence was presented that as soon as the deal was announced, I think Jim Ryan, I think it is, the head of PlayStation at Sony, sent an email saying like, oh, Microsoft is never going to make Call of Duty exclusive. Like, that's never going to happen. We just got to, we'll be fine. We'll be totally fine if this goes through. That was an email sent by the head of PlayStation before PlayStation went on this long thing arguing that was going to be their core problem. And that was followed by just constant arguments about how Microsoft is going to leverage this against Sony. Not against consumers, not against employees, against Sony.
Ignoring the fact of just the long-term implications of more fucking, industry consolidation.
Exactly.
But how are they going to bully the other superpower? It's
exactly.
Fuck off.
Yeah. And Satya Nadella, the head of Microsoft,
it always does strike me as weird that Nintendo's just sitting there I'm in this industry too. I think I sell more than both of you.
Yeah, and Nintendo came up in the conversation because it was evidence of Microsoft saying we'll publish stuff on other platforms, and they're like, hey, look at Minecraft. Minecraft is on everything. We are committing to put these games on Switch and on PlayStation, and it's not our best interest to take it out. The point made against them was, well, you took Starfield off of PlayStation, and we're like, yeah, we bought Bathesda because Sony was buying Starfield. They were going to pay for exclusivity rights to Starfield, so we jumped in. And a lot of things came out. A lot of things came out in this thing, and we knew Sony was aggressive about this, but detailing the extent to which Sony will aggressively pay just to have games skip over Xbox. As someone who has an Xbox, I can tell you there are a lot of games that come out exclusively on PlayStation. And the hypocrisy in the fandom is very funny when, they will pay to get Final Fantasy, they'll pay to get Insomniac, they'll lock down Spider-Man and all this stuff. And then Xbox gets Starfield and ponies are like, you can't do that! And I'm like, guys, this is how it works. It sucks. Yes, it's anti-consumer.
Sony likes to do some fuckery with fighting games where it's like, hey, we'll fund your game, but you gotta make Sony exclusive fighting game characters.
Yes, and
stuff like that. And it's just like, come on, guys.
And Satya Nadella is the CEO of Microsoft. He made a good point where it's like, console exclusives are not really in the best interest of Microsoft, but this is the game Sony is playing, and they are the dominant market holder. They have the biggest market share for console install base. So we have PC, and we get our money from that too. Except Steam makes most of the money there, and Valve. But Sony is the person creating this environment of exclusives and forcing these moves to be made. And it really, really sucks that when we're talking about the growth of a potential monopoly here, the conversation makes Microsoft look like the good guys. The FTC's biggest victory here was really revealing Sony's intent, how Sony conducts themselves, and making us say, yeah, no, Microsoft's better. That shouldn't be the answer.
Get on your tinfoil hats. I feel like this is part of the plan all along.
Yeah. So
it's all theater, making it seem like they give a shit about monopolies, but then they're like, let's actually use this as an opportunity to convince people that this is actually real chill for them.
So the FTC won't let me be, so everyone, just follow me, because we need a little Controversy.
So it was once the trial began in earnest, it became pretty clear that like there was no effort being made to protect directly the consumers. It was all very clearly just like whether or not, like, I'm not trying to imply any sort of direct connection between Sony and the FTC and their interests, but I think that the choice of using Sony as the foundation for their argument did not serve the interest of their lawsuit, did not serve the interest of consumers, and frankly shifted sentiment towards the thing that could be creating problems in the future. I mean, I don't think we're going to talk a whole ton about Threads, but it's like, Elon Musk burned Twitter down so badly that he made people want to go back to Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah,
like
right.
Donald Trump empowering Cambridge Analytica leaking, fucking just, that is not the guy. The $13 billion into the metaverse that 100,000 people use. That is not the guy we want to be excited for, but you put us in that position.
Right.
And that sucks. That really sucks. And I think that is going to be huge because as of now, there's nothing stopping the lawsuit.
Not touching Threads.
I mean, I could have a whole separate conversation about Threads, but I don't think that is as geek news as it is tech news. And so right now there is nothing stopping the deal from going through in the U.S. There is a concern in the U.K. That is primarily geared around the idea of cloud gaming and cloud dominance, but Microsoft is offering to say like, hey, we're going to make sure that we don't lock these things into our exclusive cloud platform. So they're working on a resolution there too. And it looks like this deal is going to go through. Once it does, eventually the FTC can sue again through, instead of just looking for an injunction, they can create a proper antitrust lawsuit. So we might go through this all again down the road and they might fucking learn their lesson. But right now, it was handled poorly, stupidly, and badly. And, like, on a selfish level, I may stand to benefit from this in the short term. I'm very concerned for the long term. Very concerned.
Yeah.
All right. Those are my bits. What do we got?
Yep.
I got it.
You got the thing?
I got the bug.
Nice.
I got the bug.
Oh.
That is, of course, until I discover there's more than one, which, of course, there are.
Of course.
Yeah, all right. Okay, I've got some stuff to talk about. I've got two things. I don't really know if this counts, the one Transformers thing, but because I mean it's kind of old news at this point, but it was new to me during this month, and I just want to get this out of the way so that to preempt the conversation during the next thing I'm going to be talking about. So Chowder and I went to go see Rise of the Beasts like a week or two ago.
It was terrible,
and yeah, it's really bad. But I don't want to talk all about that, but I do want to talk about the not a post credits, not like a stinger, the proper last scene of the movie. Oh my
god.
They tease a crossover with G.I.Joe. It's
so
like
desperate.
It's really bad. It's like
desperate.
The main guy, like, you know, he gets like a job interview and he's like talking to this guy, and then it's just like, oh, this guy knows a lot about him and all the events that just happened in the movie. We're like, oh, what's happening? Some secret government organization that's doing something. And I'm sitting here like, okay, what is this going to be? Is this Sector 7, like the one that was the branch of the government in the Michael Bay movies? Are they more directly tying that? And he like hands him a business card and he's like, if you want to get involved or whatever. And then he looks at the business card and it says G.I. Joe. And
says G.I. Joe.
Oh, fuck off. And then he like opens up a secret door to like go into like some like, techie warehouse or something.
Reveal the world's worst green screen.
It's a really bad green screen, and it's just like an empty warehouse with like one jet in it, because, if you know anything about G.I. Joe, all of the really iconic vehicles from the G.I. Joe franchise are the evil ones. The good guys just have Jeeps. So it's just like he opens it up and we're like, okay. It's literally like an empty warehouse, like badly green screened behind like this,
Bumblebee was such a promising departure. It's so sad.
Yeah. I know. I'm suspicious. I've got the suspicion that China money is, that China money pushes in that direction, because the Michael Bay movies are really, really popular in China.
Mm.
But anyway, I just wanted to get that out of the way of like There's no fucking way. Hasbro has been trying to like revitalize G.I. Joe for a while.
They did
We've
that
had
Snake
like
Eyes
3
movie
at
last
least.
year, right?
Yeah, which is the
What
funniest thing
happened
to me in the
that?
world because it came out. It wasn't very good. No one really saw it. I didn't see it, but that's the fucking concept of a Snake Eyes movie is just hilarious to me because if you know anything about like the G.I. Joe toy line or whatever,
I don't.
basically in like the original, not the original toy line, but when they started doing the 3 3/4 inch figures, they were for like paint budgets for like the assortments of the figures that would come out in a certain wave, right? They were wanting to like add more paint detail than was in the budget to some characters. So to compensate for this, they basically were like, oh, let's release a character that has no paint on it. So they just released one where it's just the sculpt entirely in black and without any paint. And it's like, oh, it's a ninja. And that's what Snake Eyes is. So now Snake Eyes has a theatrically released movie and it's based on a character that was like to save paint budget.
Literally a budget saving joke.
Exactly. Yeah.
And,
wow. Anyway, yeah. So like G.I. Joe and Transformers, because they're, 2 of Hasbro's biggest like in-house brands, have been crossing over for years, mostly in comics to, some fairly good success or whatever. But it just feels like, oh, they're trying to pin on a not relevant franchise like G.I. Joe that like new people are not interested in because it's just not the climate for it anymore. Yeah. And trying to pin it onto a franchise that is fairly popular like Transformers and to like help it limp across the finish line is just like, get the fuck out of here. It's not going to work.
Bad. It's like, and to me that introduces
Hey, Hasbro, have you considered something new?
No one has. Absolutely not.
No.
The interesting thing to me is that also introduces so many problems, like and I mean, this is probably not exclusive to the movies, but I doubt the movies would handle it appropriately. The X-Men problem that you have in the comics, which is like you have all these different rules for different sects of superheroes, and then you have the X-Men, which is like a universe unto itself where everything is bound together by like some pretty specific themes and political ideas. Yeah. And as soon as you bring them together, those different concepts sort of clash in a way where you're like, these worlds don't really fit together cohesively.
Yeah,
and as soon as G.I. Joe exists in a world where there's giant robots, it's different. It's a different thing. It changes the dynamic. It's a different thing.
And I think
no, it's not it. Anyway,
notionally, I think the original Transformers cartoon was implied to be in the same universe as G.I. Joe because there's there are characters that like show up. Well, I mean, there's G.I. Joe characters that show up in the Transformers. It would be a bigger deal if a Transformer showed up in G.I. Joe, to your point. But yeah, I don't know enough about G.I. Joe to know that it couldn't work. Yeah. But it's like, it's just really funny to me because it's like the only people who are still into G.I. Joe are people who had those toys when they're in the 80s, as opposed to Transformers that, is kind of quite frequently getting new fans, especially because like they revitalize the whole franchise every once in a while. But anyway, that's not really what I'm going to talk about. I just want to get that out of the way so that I can talk about the next thing, which is
make a crossover thing. Why not cross it over with D&D? Like a portal to to the past / fantasy dimension.
Yeah,
it's like, yeah,
that might be too much. But
I don't know, man. I would like to see Optimus Prime fight a dragon.
That's why you have your own D&D
watch
games.
Transformers
and
Prime.
Yeah.
Watch.
Okay. Yeah.
Transformers. Yeah, there's a dragon. Or The Last Night if you want to watch something that's worse.
No,
there's a dragon in
I will never. All right. What is the big thing? We've built up so much anticipation.
So, IDW has been the distributor for Transformers comics for a long time, and it came out like a year or two ago that they weren't going to be keeping the license to doing Transformers stuff, and it was kind of floated in the air like for a while, like, oh, who might be picking it up. And recently, over the past month, it was confirmed that Robert Kirkman of The Walking Dead and Invincible he's launched a new comic book which is confirmed to be like, it's its own thing, but it's confirmed to be kind of a new shared universe with a bunch of different like Hasbro franchises. Like this is going to include G.I. Joe and Transformers.
Okay.
So the comic itself, what do I have it here, is called Void Rivals, which is about like two alien races fighting over some resource on the brink of a black hole. I'm just reading the fucking headline here from
a compelling start.
Anyway, that was the first launch of it, but in that comic, it makes specific references to like G.I. Joe characters and Transformers characters. So it is kind of officially confirmed that with this comic, it's the launch of a new shared universe. So we kind of have a new place where the Transformers comics are actually going to be showing. I don't know what company that's all a part of. I don't see that written here, but the bigger news is that it's Robert Kirkman, who's, you know, a fairly prolific comic book writer, so it might have a chance to actually be good. No.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I just wanted to, before I knew that if I talked about there being a new comic universe sharing G.I. Joe and Transformers, that would inevitably launch into the Rise of the Beast stuff. So I wanted to get all the negative shit out of the way first.
It makes me. I mean, my brain is tingling here. So another thing that
Street Sharks Hasbro.
Oh, I don't know. I don't think so.
So
but Street Sharks
Hasbro.
I would like to see some Street Sharks.
Hasbro, are they owned by Viacom, or is that just is Paramount own Hasbro, or is that like a thing where they're just like that's the partnership?
Yeah, that's the partnership.
Okay.
Hasbro is its own company. Yeah. In terms like Paramount has the film license for Transformers and G.I. Joe, I assume. So that's different from like who has the comic book license, and you know, obviously the toys Hasbro. You know, it's all. You know, different things kind of rotating around each other.
So here's another thing that happened this past month that was pretty garbage is in the entire, you know, wave of streamers pulling things for tax write-offs and to avoid paying residuals, Star Trek Prodigy, the kids show that was very well reviewed, got pulled even though season 2 is nearly done.
Street Sharks is Mattel.
Okay. So that would probably go out under Warner Brothers if they did. But Star Trek Prodigy got pulled. So now the home of all Star Trek is no longer the home of all Star Trek because it's gone. And they canceled it. And even though season 2 is basically done, that is unfortunately just a fucking shit show of streamers right now anyways. But here's why this stands out to me is even though that got canceled and pulled, their Paramount Plus is currently merging with Showtime because that's also Paramount. So they're just squishing that together. You've got all the Transformers shows, Transformers Prime, and all this other stuff. And if you look at Robert Kirkman, his biggest franchises, Walking Dead, They Won't Let It Die, Invincible, just getting started on Amazon Prime, but like huge success. Like a success that
is the Walking Dead is Fear the Walking Dead still going on?
I think that's still going on, and they just announced the Walking Dead Daryl, and then the unnamed, and then the Walking. No, well, I think Walking Dead is ending. I don't know if it's actually ended yet, but we're getting a Rick and Michonne
but the franchise
spin-off.
Is still going on.
Yeah, but we're getting a Rick and Michonne show and a Daryl show, like a lot of shit. So like, for Robert Kirkman to be working on the comics for this smells like part of whatever restructure is going on at Paramount Plus. To create a new interconnected TV empire. This seems like their game for their interconnected... Because Star Trek, they've got the Star Trek bubble, but Picard just ended, Discovery is ending, got canceled, and Prodigy got pulled. But we also know there are new shows coming.
Strange New Worlds is keeping on there, right?
That's still going. Season 2 is coming out. It's great. That's doing great for them. But like, I think they're content to tighten the belt around Star Trek and keep that as one of their main things. Halo not doing great. Showtime, we'll see how that goes. Trying to get Mr. Walking Dead, I would listen. Different conversation. I'm fine if he takes the helmet off. I think the problem is that when he took the helmet off, the writers didn't know what to do. Bad show for different reasons. You can say he takes his helmet off at the end of the first game. Who cares? But this smells like a ploy. Like, if we get him to do the base, then we can say that all of this shit is from the creator of The Walking Dead, the creator of Invincible.
Right.
And maybe we actually get some real pedigree in there to create a good foundational crossover product and then just milk it with a billion other producers and stuff.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. But yeah, so that was my Transformers stuff. I've got a couple saddling the line of geek news, qualification. I've got a couple YouTube updates.
Mm-hmm.
The kind of better, more wholesome one that is, I don't know, kind of exciting if you've been a fan of the channel is that that Smosh is getting back together.
I don't know. I
if
haven't watched
you're
Smosh since like early days, so I have no idea what happened. If you could fill me in.
So basically, I mean, so I think it's Ian Haycox, I think is his name, and Anthony Padilla are the two guys who did Smosh originally. Let me make sure I get Ian's last name right. Hecox? Yeah, it is. Hecox. Hecox. Ian and Anthony were the two people who ran Smosh originally, and then they ended up selling the company, but like they were still involved with it, so it kind of became like a bigger channel with like more kind of things going off. And then a few years ago, Anthony left and decided to kind of go off and do his own thing. And the news from this month was not only did Anthony go back to Smosh, but the two of them actually bought the company back together. So it's now like originally owned. It's now owned by the two original guys again. Yeah, because like original, like there was something in there. Like there was some big YouTube company, I can't remember what it's called, that like failed a few years ago, and Smosh was one of the channels that was owned by them.
Was that the Maker, the company that like bought Rooster Teeth
Maybe.
and shit like that? They're like a weird like.
I don't think it was that, but I can't remember. But basically, Smosh ended up being acquired by I can't remember what the company is called, but the two Mythical Morning guys. So Ian and Anthony bought it back from them, or a controlling share back from them. So they basically said like all of the like sort of supplementary content that Smosh has been doing is going to keep going on and is being continued to like owned by the same thing. But now Ian and Anthony are going to be making the kind of videos that they made in the old YouTube days again with each other, which, I kind of fell off of Smosh a while ago, but it kind of brought a smile to my face to like see them doing that kind of thing again. So yeah, some kind of wholesome news until maybe it's not, but right now it is. And now we're gonna shift to some super not wholesome OG YouTuber news.
I don't know what they're talking about. I've apparently missed this entirely. So.
Oh yeah, which is the only reason that I really want to talk about it, is because I think getting a fresh reaction to it will be really funny. So Colleen Ballinger, also known as Miranda Sings, is one of the like OG YouTubers. She does like comedy song videos and skits and stuff like that. Recently, yeah, there you go.
Okay.
We caught up.
Okay.
Recently, a lot of allegations have come out against her of her having sort of inappropriate relationships with underage fans. There was one guy in particular, or maybe they them, I shouldn't say guy, but who has their own YouTube channel and was kind of like spearheading all of these like allegations because they were someone who was like basically like a super fan of Colleen Ballinger for a really long time and were a part of these group chats all back when they were like 15 or something like that. And the allegations basically include that Colleen Ballinger had like group chats with her underage fans in which she had kind of just like an inappropriate dialogue and kind of general creepiness there, like would ask them about their sex lives and tell them stories about her sex life, or it was like she like asked them if they were a virgin or something, or one of them if they were a virgin or whatever. There's lots of screenshots of like individual incidents, and then on top of that there's also allegations that she would kind of like use like her underage fandom essentially as like free or underpaid workforce in particular scenarios by like having them do favors for her and stuff like that. It's a lot of really, I'm not going to go into all the specifics of all the allegations because the main story is really the reaction to it. But a lot of kind of gross stuff, stuff that is just like, okay, right. It's just like, if it were looking at someone who did this when they were like in their early 20s and it was like, 10 years ago or something like that, then you might be like, oh, that was not the best play, but you were still young. But this is all really like 3 or 4 years ago, and she's like 35. So she's like, she was old enough to know better than to be, like interacting with her underage fans in this way. But the real big story of this
hold up. She's an OG YouTuber, but this was all 4 years ago. How's the timeline on this?
I don't know exact. Well, this wasn't always like, I don't know the exact timeline on it. This wasn't, I don't think, like early in her career. This was like after she was pretty well established. So she's been on the platform for a long time. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, she characterizes it differently than everyone else.
Look up the dates, does she? Yeah. Oh, does she?
Yeah. So the real story here, I mean, that's newsworthy in and of itself. But the thing that's really making it blow up is that Colleen decides to do a little. People have been calling it an apology video, but she hasn't called it an apology video, and it's not. So like, nope. She does like a video response to it, but this motherfucker is like decides to pull out a ukulele and do the whole thing in song, which is just the wildest fucking move to be like, responding to allegations of like potential grooming and shit like that, which I don't know also, that I would personally.
I feel like if you say a song, that is like a very broad canvas on which you can paint. Let's be clear.
Yeah.
This is a single person singing a very poorly written, quote, apology to their ukulele strumming. And to get even more in detail, it's hard to be a bad ukulele player, and she nails that. Like, all you need to do to play a ukulele is learn.
Being a bad ukulele player.
You need to learn 2 chord positions. You don't need to be a musician to look that up and see where to put your fingers. And with your other hand, you need to go da 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 da. Like, that's it. Anybody can do it. Like, 10 minutes of preparation. I promise either of you could do it. I promise you could do it.
I would like to learn the ukulele. It has kind of soured now since this.
Yeah, I don't know. After watching Colleen Ballinger's apology, I don't know. It just really kind of gave me the push I needed. I don't know, man. It was very. This is not the thing we should be focusing on, but it's what makes it funny to me. It's very much just like talking directly to the camera, saying the same note over and over again. Look down, adjust fingers, strum the chord, and then I keep talking and then one note down, and I keep saying the same thing over and over again.
Yeah,
it's really
like there is kind of like a little catchy sing-song like chorus to it or whatever, which I think is really funny because I've seen several people point this out. Like, the fact that like the actual part of the song is a little bit catchy is not good for Colleen, because it means more people are probably thinking about this more frequently than she would like them to be. Where it's just like, oh, if you put out a shitty apologize video, you fucking forget about it. But if you're sitting there along and thinking in your head, toxic gossip train, you're like, oh, that motherfucker.
Okay, so looking at this, the alleged incidents are said to have taken place back in April 2020, so 3 years ago.
Not that long ago.
So pretty recent that these actions were taken. But yeah, like, here in America, we have a lot of problems with, political corruption here and there, particularly financial sorts, but also a lot of sex scandals because, got to keep things interesting. We should be very aware that the way to handle this kind of scandal is to put out a non-video, text-only apology through a PR representative, shut the fuck up for 6 months, and then Elon Musk will blow up Twitter and we'll all be focusing on Threads. It's I'm not saying that that's how it should work. This is going to stay in the public
eye much longer because of that.
That is not how it should work. But, that is conventional wisdom, and this spits in the face of that so hilariously.
Yeah, and it's funny, too, because, if you actually watch the video, I haven't watched the video, on her channel, but I've watched, people kind of live reacting to it, so I've pretty much seen the whole thing more than once, but she doesn't really like, she talks about in the video like taking accountability and things like that, but the entire video is her just kind of like disputing things, but not with like evidence or going into specifics, just kind of being like, that's not really
Yeah.
true, this is all gossip, and it's
Yeah.
well, and you're just doing this for clout and stuff like that. And it's just like, okay, if you have a ground to stand on, then you should probably start pulling out specific things and explaining the specifics of it if you're wanting to like defend yourself, instead of just like defending yourself vaguely and like, you know, using talking points of like, oh, let's point out how everyone likes to fucking bully people on the internet for making mistakes, and it's just like, that's not this. But
yeah, I'm also looking
you
at
know?
this thing saying that she acknowledged she should not have sent a fan her underwear, which, I mean, I don't know what kind of circle...
Oh yes, I forgot about that.
I don't know what kind of circle you guys swim in, but when you start mailing someone underwear, you're kind of acknowledging that you're engaging in a pretty specific set of behaviors. That's...
Yeah, and like,
I don't think there's an
think
incident,
context,
oops, I accidentally dropped my underwear in the envelope. That's hard to...
It was like, the context of it, it was like a weird prank or something like that, but still, like, regardless if she's doing like actual grooming with sexual intent, or if she's just being like extremely negligently stupid and is being just having all these like line crossing relationships with younger fans, like, it's still real bad, you know, because like I would like to push back a little bit on like all the grooming stuff, just because like there's no real evidence that she's like actually tried to have like sexual relationships with any of these people as they were of age, and there are people that definitely do just that. So it's sort of like not really in defense of Colleen Ballinger, but in defense of people who are victims of like, you know, real hardcore grooming. Is like, I don't know that we should be throwing that word around as much, but it's definitely in that territory for sure.
Yeah, no, I think that I don't really even think that that is worth distinguishing in this sense. I think academically, I think it is worth distinguishing. I think once you're sort of on the grooming spectrum, as it were,
right, not great.
You know, like,
you shouldn't even be flirting with the line.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Like, you know, yes, there's a difference between what was Asperger's syndrome and, you know, low functioning autism, but they are essentially in the same school of neurodivergency.
Sure.
And and to simply say, hey, they're
Colin
only
says it
a
here.
little
All people who are neurodivergent are groomers.
That
Colin just said that.
I'm just saying, like, it is worth distinguishing between them, because if you are focusing on the people on that spectrum in the context of what you're saying, victims, like, you need to know how to handle them. But when you are coming up with like broad categorizations for the sake of broad conversations, it's pretty easy to say like, hey, yes, I mailed my presumably not clean underwear. That's my editorial note to someone underage. That's not a fucking prank. Anyways.
Yeah, it's just like real bad.
Yeah. That video is fucking ridiculous, man.
Yeah, it's really funny, and it does get stuck in my head more often than I like it.
All right.
It's just painful to me.
It is. It's the perfect mix of like cringe and like explosively audacious.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's one of those things that
that's all I got this month.
You don't want to enjoy it too much because it's around like a really horrible thing, but like,
yeah,
we are humans, and that video is ridiculous. Chowder, how you doing?
Hi. I've got a few things that
you
can probably just be ran through quickly, but let's start with the Nintendo Direct that came out on June 21, right? They announced quite a few stuff. Some of the highlights for me were one, they're doing a remake of Super Mario RPG. Now, if you don't know, Super Mario RPG is a game that was made by Nintendo and Square Enix for not Square Enix,
Square before the
SNES. Before the merger, yeah. And it was the first Mario RPG, and it's a beloved classic. A lot of people love it, but like it's also like kind of a solo thing. Like after that like the other Mario RPGs were different stuff like Paper Mario or the Mario and Luigi series, and like here it's, and so like this has always been like kind of a interesting one-off that like they never really return to, so it's nice to like see that
Paper Mario is an
thing
RPG
get some
series,
love.
right? Like Paper Mario is kind of like what picked up
Yeah,
those threads. Yeah.
Paper Mario's Paper Mario's an RPG series, but like it has a very different tone from Super Mario RPG. Like Super Mario RPG is very much a a very classical kind of RPG kind of story, while Paper Mario is more like a whimsical story that,
Yeah.
or a very whimsical story that just happens to use RPG mechanics to convey all that, if it makes any sense. You know, but you know, on top of that, like Super Mario RPG has some characters that all only exist in that game because, you know, the rights belong to Square. But Gino, exactly. That is probably the most notable thing, where it's like a lot of people wanted Gino for Smash Bros, but here's the thing: he's an obscure ass character in a game that only appeared in one game. That's
He got a costume, right? A me costume eventually.
Yeah, he got a costume. But that's nice to know. Next thing, they've announced that there is a Princess Peach game being made. We don't really know anything about it, but hey, show some love to the other characters. That's good. And then there's Super Mario Wonder, which is
that looks fun.
a new like 2D Mario side-scrolling game, which is like, hey, we haven't actually had one of those in a while.
Yeah,
or a new one of those in a while. For the longest time, they've been making the new Super Mario Bros.
They've just been like, it came out like on the
like,
Wii, and they've been re-releasing it on like the Wii U and the Switch. It's like new Super Mario Brothers Switch Deluxe. It like, I didn't even realize it's been the same game like 10 times over the last decade.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, no, like I was in a situation where like when the new Super Mario Bros. Game came out, starting with the DS, then the Wii and whatever, I'm like, the physics of it weren't quite appealing to me. I like the physics of like World much better, and or Super Mario World much better, and I'm just like, you know, give it a few years, they'll make a new Mario game with the different feels. And then they didn't, and I'm like, oh, I guess this is just it now. So
Yeah.
I'm glad like Super Mario Wonder is coming out with like a new graphical look that's like, oh, I like that. That's very charming. And also presumably different like game feel, because the floatiness of new Super Mario Bros. I wasn't feeling it, man.
Yeah. I
want
remember
that pinpoint.
I remember watching the trailer for Super Mario Bros. Wonder, and I was just like, this looks unexciting and pretty boring. And then he finally, after all these years, started tripping on the mushrooms, and I was like, this looks bananas and trippy and hilarious, and I'm very on board. I never in a trailer have I had like such a change of heart as when they revealed like, the pipes are worms now and you're an elephant. I'm like, okay, I'm on board.
Like my change of heart happened this way, right? I'm watching it, I'm like, oh, this is all very charming, but I don't know if I'm gonna buy this or get this. Like, maybe I'll pass, because like in this day and age with the indie scene, we have like an ocean of like amazing, charming side-scrolling games, and it's like, I don't know if I can really go for this Mario stuff. And then they announce you can play as Daisy, Princess Daisy, and I'm like, okay, you son of a bitch, I'm in. Listen, man, listen, man, I like that character, and it's like, why don't you ever use that character? She's fun, people like her. It'd be nice, and then they don't ever do anything except for like a few sports games.
I think
and now it's like,
What really interests me
Huh?
about the game is
Player in Mario Party, right?
yeah, I feel like the distinction between players in Mario Party is less
Yeah.
tactile than a platformer.
True.
I think what interests me is like Mario is obviously like the foundation of the platforming genre in a big way, and the lack of focus on the 2D elements has made me think like, oh, I mean, they just probably ran out of ideas. And what interests me about Wonder is that this idea of like, oh, the whole world goes trippy when what is it that triggers that? Is it like a specific? Was it a portal or it's not eating a mushroom? I don't remember what gameplay thing triggers it, but
I want
Eating
to
a
say
mushroom
these.
makes it trippy.
you would think, but that already is
Right.
makes
I
him
want to say
engorged.
these flowers, but I'm actually unsure.
Yeah.
Like we don't know too
Anyway,
much about the game yet.
Whatever they showed in the trailer, the stuff going trippy, in my mind, that could manifest in one of two ways. The first way I'd be pretty bummed about is if it's like, hey, you have the level, which is pretty clearly, linearly designed, and then when stuff goes trippy, it's just like, well, it looks cool, essentially just creating obstacles for you to use. The vibe that I got is something more sandboxy, along the lines of like how, again, I was talking like Tears of the Kingdom, Starfield. They're more about creating systems that you can use to like creatively solve problems in the game instead of just like A, B, lock and key style solutions. So I'm wondering if these, trippy mechanics will afford a greater level of creativity and problem solving rather than just the game looking more creative. I think that is a very important intangible distinction because like
it's definitely going to be important for them to do something interesting and new because we have Super Mario Maker. We have this.
Yes.
We basically have like every idea you could use with Mario games under the sun. You gotta do something new if you want to stand out, on top of having to compete with all those charming indie platformers.
And it's like, it's one of those things. I mean, anytime that you give players a robust set of like creation tools, modding tools, things like that, like folks like the three of us, I feel like we're often just trying to find the time to do the things that we want to do generally. But there are, believe it or not, people out there that have the time to like really just creatively express themselves by designing their own games for free. I wish I could fucking do that and had the time. But the fact is they exist, and they exist in spades, and they are very talented. And when you look at stuff like Mario Maker, when you look at the Skyrim modding community, when you look at fucking just like Halo Forge, now that it has scripting in it, the stuff that these people can build is astonishing. And the benefit of still getting stuff from a game studio is there's money behind it. You can do things that are on different axes with things like, real art direction, music composition, stuff that would like, you can generally tell like, oh, this was done independently. This was done by a studio just by a level of polish. So I think if this can't surpass like the best of Mario Maker, to me, that's at best a disappointment, at worst concerning, because the Nintendo's pedigree for their first party franchises, specifically Mario and Zelda, is like perfection. They do not settle. They will push a game from one platform to another for half a decade because they're like, we're gotta get this just the way we want. And like, that's their prerogative. And frankly,
like,
it pays off.
We still haven't gotten a follow-up to Super Mario Odyssey, man. And it's like,
I'm surprised that we got the second Zelda game in, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom on the same console, because they usually like to push things out, but who fucking knows when the Switch 2 is coming. So I think that with the muscle behind it, I think the only way for Wonder to really land and make an impact is to provide a sandbox in a way that Mario typically doesn't. In a way that I think it did in Mario Odyssey, but that we haven't seen as much of in some of the side scrollers. I don't know. That's just my thought. I don't know if they're gonna go full, if they're gonna make like Sonic CD style, just like nonlinear open exploration levels. I don't think that's the right direction. But I think this needs to be more than just like, okay, now we're on funny looking mode. Okay, now we're on regular looking mode. It needs to it needs to provide more ways for us to control Mario and make decisions. Otherwise, it's just we might as well have gotten another reskin. I'm being reductive, but like talking, if it's been 15 years, there better be reason
on that, and I am, yeah, and I'm a Mario fan, but
I'm ostensibly not, but like I care about
competition, guys.
Yeah. Because anytime a studio comes out with something that's not as good as what its fans can make, it kind of makes you question the whole dynamic, So, meh.
Right.
All right. So, recently, like a few days ago, Limited Run Games had like a digital showcase of like some upcoming like indie games, and Way Forward, from Way Forward, there's two games that interest me. First is like Shantae Advance, right? Like, so like the Shantae games, they're pretty good. Like, not like groundbreaking or anything, but they're good. And like, part of what makes their success notable is that it's not just because it's a cutesy art style and moe anime girls. It's 75% that, but the other 25% is that the game when the games were first being made on the Game Boy, they were really good, really well reviewed, and really ambitious, but they didn't sell that well. And eventually it never really picked off, and Way Forward just kind of did what like a lot of companies did at the time, and just had to pay the bills by like doing like whatever work they can get, whether it's like some sort of movie tie-in or whatever. But as time went on and they developed this cult following, they were able to like bring back these games and like bring back these ideas that they had and make more games. And now Way Forward is like really successful, making a whole bunch of different successful games. And it's like it is very much an underdog story where like they went from being nobodies to being a recognizable face in the industry, and that's kind of what appeals to me. It's just like this kind of underdog story, and this is an example of that, because like Shantae Advance, they had a game. It was a game that like they started developing, but like when like the Shantae games didn't sell that well, they were like, well, gotta scrap this. But like they kept like the work they did. They kept the art, they kept the programming, and now they're like, hey, why don't we pick that up again? Make a game that was originally supposed to be for the Game Boy Advance and just finish that. And so we got this little relic from the past that is gonna
super cool
appear. So that's fun. Yeah. The other thing that they announced is is that they're going to localize a game called Clocktower. Now, Clocktower is very much a cult classic. It never has like the as a horror game, it never has the success of like, say, your Resident Evil or Silent Hill. But it is notable because, one, it is one of the early examples of a survival horror game, and two, it came out for the Super Nintendo, a freaking 2D system. Yeah, no, and here's the thing. It's a really impressive game. It looks very impressive. It has a wonderful atmosphere. The art style is great, like, and so that's really cool. The interesting thing to note is that, like, it never got localized outside of Japan. Like, it never had an English translation or anything like that. Like when people like learned about it and played this game, it was thanks to like fan translations on emulators on the computer. So like,
okay.
so it's actually kind of neat to like let this game finally have its time in this spotlight, right? Because like up until now,
So is this
if you
like
want to,
is this a new version of it, or are they just like re-releasing the old game just on a new?
yeah, it's just re-releasing the old game. They're adding a few new bells and whistles, like a little animated intro and some like new cutscenes and theme song.
Mm-hmm.
But like ultimately, it is just the game. Like when you're in the actual gameplay part of the game, it's like, oh yeah, no, this is still the 16-bit game from the Super Nintendo, but you know, but like now you can like play it on the Switch or the PC or whatever. So
That's still cool,
that's pretty cool. Yeah. Another game that got released, and this is a weird one, but like a very fun kind of weird one. You know those Zelda CDI games, the ones that are like memes online, the ones that have all those like YouTube poop videos that like people like to
I don't
edit
know
to
that I
create.
do actually.
Yeah, I might recognize it if you showed me. What am I looking up?
Hold on a second.
Well, you gotta keep it rolling a little bit. Zelda CDI. I guess I just don't know what the CDI is. Is that
Yeah, what's CDI? Oh, I've
okay.
seen this.
Yeah.
Okay.
But a little bit of background, right? So
oh, these horribly illustrated 90s looking cartoons. Okay, I see.
Yeah.
I have seen
okay,
these.
okay. So like, a long time ago when Nintendo was like, riding off the high of the Super Nintendo, and they're like, all right, we're gonna develop like the Super Nintendo disk system, an add-on for the Super Nintendo. They were collaborating with Philips to make that, but then they were like, no, we don't want to do that anymore because of company politics, and that you could actually write a book about. Books have been written about it, in fact, but basically, like, Philips is like, well, we already spent all this money on this tech. Let's make our own system. And hey, guess what, Nintendo? According to this contract, we get to use Mario and Zelda. And so Philips, made their own Zelda games, which is wild to think about considering
how Mario versions of this too.
Yeah, no, they made like Mario games too, and
the Mario one looks a lot better. I didn't know that was a game. I thought that these images, like the shitty Mario and Luigi, was from like an old cartoon or some shit that was made about them.
Yeah, no,
that's like the Luigi meme, isn't it? Is the fucking
yay Luigi? Yeah. I mean, some of it is from the cartoons, but like, some of it is in fact from these CDI games as well. And like, they made these Zelda CDI games, and they were really bad. The CDI is not a good system that can barely play games.
Yeah, it doesn't look good.
Which is wild because it's a game console, but
you're right.
Yeah, and cut to like the early days of YouTube, people like discovered these games and are like, what the fuck? What are these cutscenes? Who animated this? What is this voice acting? This is surreal and strange and messed up. Let's make it more surreal and strange and messed up by like taking these cutscenes and like re-editing them in ways that like create new humor or new like it's early memeing, like the early days of memeing, and these games were like very much a part
of what's going on with them?
Yeah.
So
what's the news?
They recently spirit like a game that is very much styled after these fucked up games
no.
has been announced.
Oh,
And it's called Arzette, the Jewel of Faramore, and
that sounds like nonsense.
Is this the kind of thing? Is this the kind of thing where like the company is hoping? Is this like a Morbius situation where they're hoping that it's going to be profitable because of how much people shit on it?
No, I don't think that's it, because one, it's not made by Philips, the Russian programmers and animators. Nobody knows who they are that Philips hired. But the idea behind this game seems to be, okay, let's make it so that like the actual playing the game part is not ass. Like genuinely kind of
fun. It's a good start. Let's make it not bad. Let's start there.
But like, the cutscenes still have that weird, creepy, both overly animated but still stilted quality. Like,
yeah, just an odd choice. Unless you're like really specifically referencing that.
Yeah. I mean,
like, were there popular versions of these games that, like, like other than the Mario and Zelda one? Like, were there actually ones that people like?
No.
Or is it just a genre and that like no one has ever cared for?
Here's the thing about stuff like the CDI and the Sega CD is that in the early 90s, those were 16-bit systems. You had these CD add-ons because CD was a new way of distributing media for games because it had more storage, so you could do more bigger creative stuff on them than you could with most cartridges for less money, because cartridges are expensive as fuck. But the add-ons for existing consoles, which were already astronomically expensive back then, like even without inflation, I'm pretty sure a Sega Genesis costs more than an Xbox does today, or a PS5. So you have these things, and the companies are trying to push them. So it's the equivalent of, well, I guess, I mean, like a PSVR or something like that, where it's like, it is technically novel technology pushing like, a high-end thing, but nobody wants to buy it. So then you have the company saying like, well, we need to ship something on this so that people might buy it. Enter deeply compromised products like what Chatter is describing. So no, these are not popular, and they didn't proliferate. There was never a big install base, so there was never a reason to go back to it.
Right.
Yeah, but like they have this kind of goofy quality, and what we have here is like multiple layers of meta, where it's like we have a game that styles itself off these cutscenes that were like mocked, and these cutscenes are from a game that are in a way kind of an unintentional mockery of The Legend of Zelda, and it's like, you know what? I'm in for what you're putting down. This seems silly in a fun kind of way, and I'm like, they're very much playing into that kind of cheesiness where like the characters have the weirdest deliveries, like you want to challenge me, and it's like I don't know. It tickled me in a fun way.
All right. Do you have
any
other
stories you want to share? Like a reference to it?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah. There's a trailer for it. Want me to link it?
Send it to us. I'll take a look at it. I have no affinity for the original stuff you're talking about outside of like historical interest, so I can't promise I will be similarly tickled. But
no, look, I've never played the CDI games.
I didn't like patronize. I'm saying I didn't patronize like the YouTube videos and stuff. Like I'm aware of the imagery.
Oh yeah,
that's all.
No, no, I have nostalgia for the YouTube poops. So yeah,
YouTube poops. Jesus Christ. So I think that about wraps up our roundup, and now we have to head into the editor's room and deliberate of all the stories.
I would like to say one more thing. Just I learned about something they're making that's going to be released in February 2024. It is a musical adaptation of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 1 Phantom Blood. Like, it's going to be a musical. It's going to be performed at the Imperial Theater in Tokyo. And I'm like, oh fuck yeah, give me that. Give me like overly jacked WWE wrestlers in like Vogue fashions.
Yeah.
Singing about vampires and shit. I want that.
Good shit.
Okay. I'm
Yeah.
good.
That is fine. That is also very far out of my wheelhouse. In my wheelhouse is the editor's room, in which we deliberate to figure out of the stories that we just brought to the table, what do we think are going to be the most important? What is the top story for June into early July of 2023? Now, we did not talk about the ongoing strikes, the recently authorized SAG-AFTRA strike on top of the WGA strike. We mentioned Threads, the new Instagram competitor to Twitter. I feel as though these are
We just also didn't. We didn't talk about all of the
the production
weird release shit with the Spider-Verse.
Yeah. I think that is. I think the reason being is those are such big, broad things that they go far beyond geek news, and they are very industry-shaking, though they are important. And we should absolutely be supporting people who are trying to not have their identity stolen for $200 in perpetuity. So let's not do that. Did y'all see the video that Ron Perlman posted?
No, I didn't.
Because yes, I did. No, he's basically like, oh yeah, we know who the executive was who said that about who made the comment about like
about the Deadline article saying that
just starving out the writers and waiting for them to lose their homes and stuff.
And he basically looks into his phone camera and he says,
know his address.
He says, "There's more than one way to lose your house, motherfucker." It's
fucking love Ron Perlman.
It's intense. It's terrifying. You're like,
Ron
God, yeah. That
I love how real this
absolutely
dude is.
Wild.
Like,
I think he deleted it, but no, do not play a video into your microphone.
You're gonna come arrest me? I'm
Chatter,
fucking
please.
Hellboy.
Do not play a video into the microphone on here. That would be atrocious to listen to. But of the stories that we did cover in the geek news,
I'm not playing
sphere,
a video into the microphone.
I would punch you. I would get an Uber to Schenectady and punch your microphone for subjecting my ears to that horror. But you should absolutely look it up. I think he deleted it, but it's circulating, and it's horrifying. It's impressive. Of the stories that we did talk about, specifically in the geek news sphere, what do we think is the top story? Are people going to come away from this month talking about a specific game, a specific lawsuit, a specific ukulele, perhaps? What do we think? What do we think?
Everyone's talking about that. I don't know if it counts as geek news, though. I just wanted to talk about it.
I mean, YouTube culture is I think certainly a part of it. So,
weird. Go ahead.
It's the Activision thing for me, just because like unlike before where it was like, hey, there's this crazy news. It's like it's happening, and it revealed a lot of other shit about the games industry in a big way. I don't know. I feel like it's big, not in terms of what we learned from it, but what is happening because of it. And it's tangible in a way that it wasn't before. That's my nomination for biggest story people should follow.
I would back that. I was also thinking about that game you were talking about. What was it? The Star something?
Starfield. Starfield's big.
Starfield.
I could get behind Starfield because that is that is more squarely like a games conversation, and the tension of is this going to be garbage is interesting to me.
Right. Yeah. But that might be more of a story once it actually
comes
out. Yeah.
Chatter, any thoughts?
Yeah, my vote goes to no, same as you guys. My vote goes to the Microsoft. Buying out Activision Blizzard stuff.
Yeah, again, I just cannot.
We had a nice streak there of Activision not being our story of the month, but
unfortunately they're back in it. God, but yeah, and so much other stuff came out of this too. Budgets of games that we didn't know before, payouts to executives. There was one instance where part of the reason we learned a bunch of stuff about Sony's money and contracts was because somebody submitted redacted documents, and they redacted it by going over the words with a Sharpie. It turns out the machines that scan the things can just see the difference in the ink, so nothing was redacted.
That's so.
Oh my God! Come on! This is common knowledge. Don't just use a Sharpie.
Redacting pens are like a thing that you use.
Yeah.
Or you could just print it that way, you know. So it's it was a real show of a trial for something that was literally just for an injunction. Like, it didn't even permanently resolve anything, and a lot of banana stuff happened. Honestly, The Verge's coverage on it was extraordinarily thorough. They had just like one guy on it the whole week, and it's if you want to read about it, there's some crazy stuff in there, huge implications for stuff that has happened and will happen, potentially horrifying. But until the apocalypse comes, I will enjoy having more games on Game Pass. Thank you very much. But I think that's it for now. We'll try to reconvene next month. I have some traveling in the early week of August, but after that, I think I can dive right back in with you guys. And I'm excited to see what's coming next, because it's a quiet July with the exception of some movies. I saw Mission Impossible. Barbenheimer's happening, but of course now no actors can promote their movies. So we'll kind of see how that shakes out. But
Yeah.
I expect that June was our roller coaster of a month, and now we're back on a dry July, as it were. With that,
Latter half of July.
yeah, here we go. So I've been Colin. You can kind of, I don't know, I'm on YouTube, I'm on Threads. I do work for a few different people, but what do I want to promote? Yeah, you go watch my Destiny videos. Learn how to do a dungeon in Destiny. You can find me Ketch on YouTube, CKETCH. Learn how to do some Nightfalls. There's still a few weeks left in the season. Nobody cares, but I'll get a couple bucks if you watch it. They're only 3 minutes. Most people make 15-minute guides. These ones only 3 minutes. I won't waste your time. Unfortunately, I did enable non-skippable ads, so get fucked.
You sellout.
There's no mid-roll. No
hi.
mid-roll ads. Not possible.
In 3 minutes, yeah. I hope not. I've been Jeff. You can find me on my YouTube channel where I do toy reviews. That's Alchemist Prime Reviews. You can find me on 2 separate Instagram accounts. One where I post toy stuff, that is toys.n.art, and where I post art stuff, that is things I wish existed with a dot between each word. That's me. I exist.
Yeah,
Allegedly.
I'm Daimel Chaudhary, or Chowder, whichever you prefer. You can find me on Twitter at Timel_Chowder, at least until it eventually dies. I mean, I'm very confident it's gonna die now.
Yeah.
I'm trying to move over to other platforms.
Like Instagram is a good one for posting art stuff, but then again, that is
exactly.
also Zuck. So
Yeah, at least Threads has the eventual promise of functioning on an open source blockchain thing. So like eventually you won't be tied to it. Blockchain, not like the NFT sense. Blockchain in the fact that it's decentralized. In the way that like Blue Sky, and it'll use the same protocol as Mastodon. So so eventually you could just be like, I'm done with Threads, boop boop, I'm on a different app now. So there's at least that. Instagram can't really do that. It's built, it's a whole different thing. But it is better for pictures.
I'm trying to be on Tumblr and Instagram, but otherwise, there's also our sister podcast, Dice Populi, which I'm actually almost done with editing my little chunk.
Your little chunkity doodah.
Technical difficulty.
Yeah, a little bit of a hiccup there, but we're back on track. Just the worst weekend for me to try to get that knocked out, but we're cruising. And I think that is about it for now. We'll chat again in a few weeks, and if you enjoy having some folks on in the background while you do anything else in your house, we will certainly try to fill that obligation and tell you about some more geek news. For now, you can simply tremble at the fear that Microsoft will own everything. Good night, everybody.
Bye. Ciao.
There you go.
Adios. Ciao again.
Adios, All right,
there
bye.
again.
Okay.